discover the moving tale of Isadora Martinez, a talented nurse whose life crumbles after being wrongfully accused of negligence. When she retreats to her aunt and uncle's farm to heal, she encounters Heitor Santos, a horse trainer with his own painful past, and together they find unexpected healing through a wounded foal named Copper. A beautiful journey of redemption, second chances, and finding love in broken places. Before we begin this story, comment below where you're watching from. The hospital corridor buzzed with whispers as Isadora Martinez walked past her former colleagues. At just 25, she had already experienced enough trauma to last a lifetime. Her white nurse's uniform, once worn with pride, now felt like a prison jumpsuit as she made her way to the director's office. "Everyone's staring at me," she muttered under her breath, clutching her resignation letter tightly in her hand. 3 months ago, Isadora had been the rising star of Metropolitan Private Hospital. Dedicated, skilled, and compassionate, she had earned the respect of doctors and patients alike. But that was before the Henderson case, before everything fell apart. The memory of that night still haunted her. Mr. Henderson, a 62-year-old cardiac patient, had died under her care. Though the investigation proved she followed all protocols correctly, the wealthy family's accusations of negligence had spread through the hospital like wildfire. Even after being officially cleared, the damage was done. Her reputation was in tatters. Dr. Phillips, the hospital director, looked up from his desk as she entered his office. "Isadora, please sit down," he said, gesturing to the chair across from him. His expression was a mixture of pity and discomfort. "I heard you wanted to see me." Isadora placed the envelope on his desk. "My resignation letter, effective immediately." "This necessary?" "The board cleared you of all wrongdoing," Dr. Phillips said, not touching the envelope. "Give it time. People will forget." Isadora shook her head, tears threatening to spill. "They won't forget. And neither will I. I can't work where nobody trusts me anymore." As she left the office, her phone rang. It was her mother. Isadora hesitated before answering. "Are you really quitting your job?" her mother demanded without even saying hello. "Your father and I didn't pay for nursing school so you could throw everything away over one mistake." "It wasn't a mistake, Mom. I was cleared," Isadora replied, her voice strained. "And yes, I'm quitting." "Then don't expect any support from us. You need to face your problems, not run away from them." The call ended abruptly, leaving Isadora standing, alone in the hospital parking lot, feeling more isolated than ever. Back in her small apartment, Isadora sat on the edge of her bed, surrounded by half-packed boxes. The walls that had once felt cozy now seemed to close in on her. Every time she checked social media, another old friend had unfollowed her. Even her roommate had moved out, claiming she needed space. Isadora picked up a framed photo of her parents, wondering how they could so easily believe the worst about their own daughter. Next to it was a picture of her with her aunt and uncle at their farm during her last visit 5 years ago. Uncle Robert and Aunt Marta had always been different from her parents. While her mother and father pushed for perfection and status, her aunt and uncle valued simplicity and kindness. Their farm in Oakwood Valley, 3 hours from the city, had been her childhood sanctuary during summer vacations. Before she could second-guess herself, Isadora grabbed her phone and dialed her aunt's number. "Aunt Marta, it's Isadora," she said when her aunt answered. "I was wondering, is your office still open? Could I stay at the farm for a while?" 2 days later, Isadora's old sedan bumped along the dirt road leading to her aunt and uncle's farm. Fall had painted the countryside in shades of orange and gold. As she approached the large white farmhouse with its wrap-around porch, she felt a weight lifting from her shoulders. Aunt Marta rushed out to meet her, arms outstretched. Plump and warm, with grey hair tucked into a messy bun, she enveloped Isadora in a hug that smelled of cinnamon and comfort. "Oh, look at you," she said, holding Isadora at arm's length. "You're too thin, but we'll fix that." Uncle Robert appeared, behind his wife. Tall and weathered from years working outdoors, he gave Isadora a gentler hug. "Good to have you here, kiddo. Don't mind your aunt. She thinks everyone needs fattening up." Inside the farmhouse, everything was just as Isadora remembered. Handmade quilts draped over comfortable furniture, the scent of fresh-baked bread, and family photos covering every surface. A fire crackled in the stone fireplace, fighting off the autumn chill. Over dinner, Isadora picked at her food while her aunt and uncle carefully avoided mentioning the scandal or her parents. Instead, they talked about farm life, the new irrigation system, this year's apple harvest, and the horses they bred and trained. "We have 8 horses right now," Uncle Robert explained. 5 mares, 2 geldings, and 1 stallion. "Jupiter, that's our stallion, just sired a foal 3 days ago. Beautiful little colt." "That's wonderful," Isadora said, attempting a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "I remember how much I loved the horses when I visited as a kid." "Well, your room is already upstairs," Aunt Marta said, noticing Isadora's exhaustion. "The same one you used during your summer visits. We'll have plenty of time to catch up tomorrow." That night, in her childhood bedroom under a handmade quilt, Isadora slept deeply for the first time in months. The next morning, Isadora woke to the sound of roosters crowing and the smell of coffee brewing. After months of hospital shifts and city noise, the farm's sounds felt foreign yet comforting. She pulled on jeans and a sweater and made her way downstairs. "Good morning, sunshine," Aunt Marta greeted, setting a plate of pancakes on the table. "Your uncle's already out in the stables. There was some commotion with the new foal last night." Concerned, Isadora asked, "Is everything okay?" Aunt Marta's face clouded. "The little one took a fall. Got spooked by something and tumbled in his stall. Your uncle's been up most of the night with him." After breakfast, Isadora pulled on her boots and headed toward the stables. The crisp autumn air filled her lungs as she walked down the well-worn path. She could hear the nickering of horses before she even entered the large wooden structure. Inside, the stable was warm and smelled of hay and horses. Uncle Robert stood in one of the stalls, his back to her, speaking in low tones to someone Isadora couldn't see. "How bad is it?" a deep voice asked. "Not her uncle's." "Bad enough," Uncle Robert replied. "He might not make it. Leg's pretty banged up and he's refusing to nurse." Isadora cleared her throat and both men turned. Next to her uncle stood a stranger, tall and broad-shouldered with dark hair and serious eyes. He wore a well-worn leather jacket and had the calloused hands of someone who worked with them for a living. "Isadora," her uncle exclaimed, "come meet Heitor Santos. He's my business partner in the breeding operation." The man, Heitor, gave her a quick nod but didn't smile. There was something closed off about him, a distance in his eyes that made Isadora think he carried his own burdens. "Nice to meet you," she said politely. "My aunt mentioned there was a problem with the new foal." Uncle Robert sighed, moving aside, so Isadora could see into the stall. On a bed of fresh straw lay a tiny, copper-colored foal. His spindly legs were folded awkwardly, and even to her untrained eye, Isadora could see one of them was swollen. The little horse's breathing was rapid, his eyes dull with pain. "What happened?" she asked, her nurse's instincts kicking in as she knelt beside the foal. "Got spooked during the night," her uncle explained. "Found him this morning with that injured leg. We've called the vet, but he's tied up with an emergency on the Johnson farm. Won't be here until late afternoon." Isadora gently touched the foal's neck, feeling his rapid pulse. "Has he eaten?" Heitor spoke up, his voice gruff. "Mother's right there, but he won't nurse. Bad sign." Isadora looked across to the adjacent stall, where a beautiful chestnut mare paced nervously, occasionally peering over at her foal. "May I?" Isadora asked, already slipping off her jacket and rolling up her sleeves. Uncle Robert looked surprised but nodded. "Be careful. He's in pain and might lash out." Isadora spoke softly to the foal as she carefully examined him. Years of nursing had taught her to communicate calm, even when she didn't feel it. The leg was definitely injured, possibly fractured, but what concerned her more was the foal's dehydration and weakness. "He needs fluids," she said, "and pain management. Do you have any supplies I could use?" "I was a nurse," she added, seeing Heitor's skeptical expression. "Was?" he asked, the single word loaded with questions. Isadora tensed, preparing for judgment. "Yes, was." To her surprise, Heitor didn't press further. Instead, he nodded at her uncle. "Robert has a pretty good medical kit for the horses. I'll go get it." While Heitor was gone, Uncle Robert explained more about the foal. "His name's Copper on account of his color. Jupiter's first offspring. We had high hopes for him." "Had?" Isadora questioned, stroking the foal's neck. Well, with that leg, even if he survives, he might not be sound enough for breeding or riding. Hayter returned, with a large medical kit. Isadora was impressed with the supplies, almost as good as what she'd had at the hospital. Working methodically, she cleaned the wound, applied antibiotic ointment, and carefully wrapped the leg. Her hands remembered their purpose, moving with the precision that had once earned her praise. "We need to get him hydrated," she said. "Do you have bottles for feeding?" Uncle Robert nodded. "For emergencies, I'll get one." Left alone with Hayter, Isadora felt his eyes on her as she continued to tend to the foal. The silence between them was heavy, but not entirely uncomfortable. "You're good at this," he finally said. "With animals." "I'm good with patients," she corrected, then added softly, "I always was." Something in her tone must have revealed more than she intended, because Haytor's expression shifted slightly. Not pity exactly, but recognition, as if he understood what it meant to defend your own worth. When Uncle Robert returned with the bottle, Isadora showed them how to prop up the foal slightly to help him drink. Under her gentle coaxing, Copper took his first nourishment of the day. "Well, I'll be," Uncle Robert said, visibly relieved. "Maybe there's hope for him after all." Isadora spent the rest of the morning in the stable, watching over Copper. When the vet finally arrived, he confirmed her suspicions about the fracture, but was impressed with her first aid. "You've probably saved his life," the vet told her. "The next 48 hours will be critical, but he's got a fighting chance thanks to you." That evening at dinner, Aunt Marta couldn't stop praising Isadora's skills. "Our very own horse whisperer. Robert said even Haytor was impressed, and that man is never impressed by anything." Uncle Robert chuckled. "True enough, Haytor's been a godsend for the business. Nobody knows horses better, but he's not exactly the friendly type. Been through a lot, that boy." Isadora's curiosity was piqued. "What do you mean?" Her aunt and uncle exchanged glances. "Not our story to tell," Aunt Marta said gently. "But I will say this. Some people carry scars that don't show on the outside." Those words stayed with Isadora as she returned to the stable later that night to check on Copper. She hadn't planned to go, but something pulled her there. Perhaps the need to be useful again, to care for something without fear of judgment. The stable was quiet except for the occasional snort or rustle. A lantern hung near Copper's stall, casting a warm glow. To her surprise, Hayter was there, sitting on a hay bale beside the foal, who seemed to be sleeping peacefully. He looked up as she approached, his expression unreadable in the dim light. "I couldn't sleep," Isadora explained, suddenly feeling like an intruder. "Wanted to check on him." Haytor moved over slightly, making room for her on the hay bale. It was a small gesture, but an invitation nonetheless. Isadora hesitated only briefly, before sitting beside him, leaving careful space between them. "He's doing better," Haytor said. "Taking water every hour. Tried to stand earlier." "That's good news," Isadora replied, genuinely relieved. They sat in silence for a while, watching the gentle rise and fall of Copper's breathing. It was strange, Isadora thought, how comfortable silence could be with some people. No pressure to explain or defend herself. "Why did you leave nursing?" Hayter asked suddenly, his voice low. The question caught her off guard. Isadora stiffened, preparing for the usual interrogation that followed whenever someone learned about her past. But when she looked at Haytor, there was no judgment in his eyes, only a quiet curiosity. "It's a long story," she said. "I've got time," he replied, settling back against the stable wall, "but only if you want to tell it." Isadora took a deep breath, surprised to find that for the first time, she did want to tell someone. Not the whole hospital, not her disappointed parents, not former friends who had already decided what kind of person she was. Just this quiet man who seemed to understand that some stories were hard to tell. "A patient died," she began, her voice barely above a whisper. "Not because of me, I was cleared of any wrongdoing. But his family was influential. They needed someone to blame." Haytor nodded, his eyes never leaving her face. "And everyone believed them instead of you." It wasn't a question, but a statement. Gave understanding. In that moment, something shifted between them, a recognition of shared pain, though its sources remained unspoken. Copper stirred in his sleep, making a small, whimpering sound. Instinctively, both Isadora and Heitor reached out to soothe him, their hands meeting briefly on the foal's neck. Instead of pulling away, they let their hands rest there, connected by the small life they were both trying to save. "He needs someone who believes in him," Heitor said softly. "Someone who won't give up." Isadora wasn't sure if he was still talking about the foal. "Then I guess I'll stay with him," she replied, "for as long as he needs me." Heitor's eyes met hers, holding a depth of emotion that startled her. "Good," he said simply. "We could use someone like you around here." As Isadora walked back to the farmhouse later, the cool night air filling her lungs, she realized she had just had her first real conversation in months, one where she wasn't defending herself or being judged. And somehow, it had happened with the most unlikely person, a quiet, reserved man who seemed as wounded as she was. For the first time since the Henderson case, Isadora felt a tiny spark of something she had thought was gone forever. Hope. The next morning, Isadora woke before dawn. For the first time in months, she hadn't been plagued by nightmares about Mr. Henderson and the hospital. Instead, her dreams had been filled with horses running through autumn fields and a pair of dark, understanding eyes. She dressed quickly and headed to the stables, eager to check on Copper. The air was crisp, and the first hints of sunrise painted the sky in shades of pink and gold. The farm was peaceful at this hour, a stark contrast to the busy hospital corridors that had been her world for so long. Inside the stable, Isadora found Copper awake and alert. The swelling in his leg had gone down slightly, and when she approached, he made a feeble attempt to stand. "Easy there, little one," she said, gently pressing him back down. "You need to rest that leg." "He's stubborn," a voice said from behind her, "like his father." Isadora turned to find Heitor entering the stable, carrying a bucket of water and some medical supplies. Despite the early hour, he looked like he'd been up for some time. His dark hair was damp, and his plaid shirt was rolled up at the sleeves, revealing strong forearms marked with a few old scars. "Good morning," she said, suddenly aware of how she must look in her rumpled clothes with her hair hastily pulled back. Heitor nodded in greeting. "You're up early." "Couldn't sleep. Wanted to check on him." She gestured to Copper, who was now nuzzling at her hand. "He seems better. Thanks to you." Heitor set down his supplies and knelt beside the foal. His movements were confident, but gentle, the actions of a man who had spent his life around animals. "Robert told me you used to come here as a kid." "Every summer until high school," Isadora confirmed, watching as he checked the bandage on Copper's leg. "Then college and nursing. School took over. I haven't been back in 5 years. What made you come now?" There was no judgment in his question, just quiet curiosity. Isadora hesitated. "I needed somewhere to breathe." Heitor nodded, as if that explained everything. And maybe it did. They worked together in companionable silence, changing Copper's bandages and coaxing him to take some milk from a bottle. Isadora was impressed by Heitor's knowledge and skill with horses. His hands, large and calloused from farm work, became surprisingly delicate when tending to the injured foal. "You've done this before," she observed. A shadow crossed Heitor's face. "Had a breeding farm of my own once, before I partnered with your uncle." There was something in his tone that suggested a story, one that wasn't happy. But before Isadora could ask, Uncle Robert arrived, looking pleased to find them both already tending to Copper. Well, looks like our patient has the best care team in the county," he said cheerfully. "How's he doing?" "Better," Heitor replied, trying to stand, drinking well. Good. That's our boy." Uncle Robert beamed at them both. "Hi, Isadora, your aunt's got breakfast ready when you're done here. And Heitor, you're welcome to join us." Heitor shook his head. "Thanks, but I've got to check the fence line in the south pasture. Storm last night might have damaged it." "I'll help," Isadora offered, surprising herself as much as the two men. "That is, if you don't mind the company." Heitor looked at her for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Then the corner of his mouth lifted slightly, not quite a smile but close. "Fence work isn't easy. I'm stronger than I look, she replied, lifting her chin slightly, and I could use the fresh air. After a quick breakfast with her aunt and uncle, Isadora changed into work boots and a warm jacket. She found Hator loading tools into an old pickup truck near the barn. You sure about this? He asked as she approached. It's cold out there, and the ground will be muddy after last night's rain. I'm sure, she said firmly. After months of being treated like she was, fragile or worse, dangerous, the physical work sounded appealing. I want to help. The drive to the south pasture took them along winding dirt roads that cut through the farm's rolling hills. Isadora watched the landscape pass by, struck by how different everything looked in the fall. The last time she'd been, here it had been summer, and the fields had been lush and green. Now they were golden, preparing for winter's sleep. It's beautiful here, she said, breaking the silence. Peaceful. Hator kept his eyes on the road. It grows on you, he admitted. Took me a while to appreciate it. How long have you worked with my uncle? About 3 years. After... He paused, his hands tightening on the steering wheel. After I lost my place. He didn't elaborate, and Isadora didn't push. She recognized the walls people built around painful memories. She had plenty of her own. The fence line at the south pasture had indeed been damaged by the storm. A large branch had fallen across it, bending the wire and breaking one of the posts. Hator parked the truck nearby and began unloading tools. I'll clear the branch if you can hold the wire, he instructed, handing her a pair of thick gloves. Working. Side by side, they fell into a rhythm. The physical labor was exactly what Isadora needed, something concrete to focus on, a problem she could actually fix. Sweat beaded on her forehead despite the cool air, and her muscles burned pleasantly with the effort. Hator worked methodically, removing the broken post and digging a hole for the new one. Watching him, Isadora was struck by his efficiency. No wasted movement, no unnecessary words. Everything about him was purposeful. Hand me that post, driver, he said, pointing to a heavy metal tool. As Isadora passed it to him, their fingers brushed. She felt a jolt of awareness that had nothing to do with the cold or the work. Hator seemed to feel it too, because he looked up suddenly, meeting her eyes. For a moment, neither of them moved. Then he took the tool, clearing his throat. Thanks. By midday, they had repaired the fence and were sitting on the tailgate of the truck, eating the sandwiches Aunt Marta had packed for them. The sun had burned away the morning clouds, warming the air slightly. You're good at this, Hator said, nodding toward the repaired fence. Not afraid to get your hands dirty, Isadora smiled. I grew up helping my dad with home repairs. Before... She trailed off, thinking of how distant her parents had become, especially since the hospital incident. Before what? Hator asked. Isadora sighed. Before I disappointed them. My parents wanted me to be a doctor, not a nurse. Then when the incident happened at the hospital, She shook her head. They believed what they read in the papers. Didn't even ask for my side of the story. Hator was quiet for a moment. Family can hurt you worse than strangers, he finally said, because you expect more from them. The simple truth of his words hit Isadora hard. She had never quite been able to articulate why her parents' reaction had wounded her so deeply. Yes, she whispered, exactly. On the drive back to the main farm, Isadora found herself watching Hator's profile, the strong line of his jaw, the slight furrow between his brows that never quite disappeared, the way his eyes seemed to be looking at something far beyond the road ahead. She wondered what had happened to put that permanent shadow there. Back. At the stables, they checked on Copper together. The foal was improving, even attempting to stand on his 3 good legs. His mother watched anxiously from the next stall, nickering softly whenever her baby made a sound. He's a fighter, Hator observed. Good sign. Yes, he is, Isadora agreed, gently stroking Copper's neck. He just needs someone to believe in him. As the words left her mouth, she realized she was echoing what Hator had said the night before. He noticed too, because he gave her that almost smile again, a slight softening of his usually stern expression. The days began to follow a pattern. Isadora would wake early and head to the stables to check on Copper. Hator was usually already there, and they would work together to care for the foal. Then they would tackle whatever farm tasks needed doing, fixing fences, cleaning stalls, checking on the other horses. In the afternoons, while Hator worked with Jupiter, the stallion, Isadora often sat with Copper, reading to him from books she borrowed from her aunt's extensive library. Sometimes she sang softly, old lullabies her grandmother had taught her. She didn't think anyone could hear her, until one day she looked up to find Hator standing in the doorway, watching her with an expression she couldn't quite read. "Sorry," she said, embarrassed. "I didn't realize anyone was listening." "Don't. Stop," he said quietly. "He likes it. So do the other horses." Isadora felt her cheeks warm. "My grandmother used to sing to me when I couldn't sleep. I thought it might help Copper relax." Hator nodded. "Music soothes them. He hesitated. "Someone I knew used to play the guitar in the stables. The horses would all go quiet, listening." It was the first time he had volunteered any personal information, and Isadora sensed it was significant. "Who was it?" she asked gently. "Who played for them?" Hator's expression shuttered. "No one important," he said, his voice suddenly distant. "Just someone I used to know." Before Isadora could respond, he turned and walked away, leaving her with the distinct feeling that she had accidentally touched a wound that hadn't healed. That evening at dinner, Isadora asked her aunt about Hator's past. Aunt Marta exchanged a look with Uncle Robert before answering. "Hator had his own breeding farm," she explained, her voice soft with sympathy. "Beautiful place called Sunset Harras. About an hour from here, he was engaged to a lovely girl named Eleanor. They were planning their wedding when—" She trailed off, looking to her husband. Uncle Robert sighed. "There was a fire, electrical problem in one of the stables. Elena was inside, trying to save the horses. Hator was in town, picking up supplies. By the time he got back—" He shook, his head sadly. "She didn't make it," Aunt Marta finished. "Nor did most of the horses. Hator lost everything that day. His fiancée, his livelihood, his home. He blamed himself for not being there." Isadora felt a cold weight settle in her chest. "When was this?" 3 years ago, Uncle Robert said. "He showed up here about 6 months later, looking for work. I'd known him for years. Our families were in the same business. I offered him a partnership instead. The man knows horses better than anyone I've ever met. He hardly spoke for the first year," Aunt Marta added. "Just worked from dawn till dusk, then slept in the small cabin out by the east pasture. He's gotten better, but—" She sighed. "Some hurts go too deep to ever fully heal." That night Isadora couldn't sleep. She kept thinking about Hator, about the pain he must carry every day. No wonder he had recognized something in her. They were both walking wounded, trying to find their way after losing parts of themselves. Around midnight she gave up on sleep and pulled on a sweater. Perhaps checking on Copper would settle her mind. The night was clear and cold, stars scattered like diamonds across the black sky. Isadora wrapped her arms around herself as she walked toward the stables. A light glowed faintly from inside, which surprised her. Who else would be up at this hour? As she approached, she heard a low voice, not singing exactly, but speaking rhythmically, almost like poetry or a prayer. She slowed her steps, not wanting to intrude. Through the stable door, she could see Hator, sitting beside Copper's stall, his back against the wall, his head tilted slightly upward. He was reciting something in a language Isadora didn't understand. Portuguese, she guessed, remembering that Santos was a Brazilian surname. The words, though unintelligible to her, carried a haunting beauty. There was grief in his voice, but also a strange tenderness she had never heard from him before. Copper and the other horses were completely still, as if enchanted by the sound. Isadora stood frozen, afraid to move and break the spell. But as if sensing her presence, Hator suddenly stopped and turned toward the door. "I'm sorry," she said quickly. "I have a meeting with the accountant at 10. As he walked away, Alana called after him. "Mateus." He turned. "Thank you for trusting me with this." Something flickered in his eyes, an emotion she couldn't quite name. "You're welcome, Alana." For the rest of the morning, Alana worked with renewed energy, clearing years of neglect from the flower beds. By lunchtime, she'd uncovered dozens of perennials gasping for sunlight. She was so absorbed in her task that she didn't notice the sleek black car coming up the driveway until it stopped right in front of the house. A woman stepped out, tall, impeccably dressed in a cream suit that probably cost more than Alana had made in a month at her candy shop. "Excuse me," the woman called, her heels clicking on the pavement as she approached. "Is Mateus around?" Alana stood, uncomfortably aware of her dirt-stained clothes and messy hair. "He's in a meeting. Can I help you?" The woman gave Alana a cool once-over. "I doubt it. I'm Victoria Harrington. Mateus will want to see me." Before Alana could respond, the front door opened and Mateus emerged, followed by an older man carrying a briefcase. His face registered surprise at the sight of Victoria. "Vic, what are you doing here?" "Surprise visit," she said, moving past Alana as if she were part of the landscaping. "Daddy wanted me to check how the investment opportunities are coming along." She reached him and placed a manicured hand on his arm, kissing his cheek. "You've been ignoring my calls." "I've been busy," he replied, though he didn't push her away. "Victoria, this is Alana Parker, one of our new workers. Alana, this is Victoria Harrington, a friend from college." The pause before "friend" spoke volumes. Victoria barely glanced at Alana. "Charmed, I'm sure. Mateus, can we talk privately? I've made lunch reservations in town." Mateus hesitated, looking between the two women. "I still have work to do here." "It's the new French place you mentioned wanting to try," Victoria pressed. "Please, for old time's sake." Something in his expression shifted. "Fine, let me grab my jacket." To Alana, he added, "The flower beds look great. Feel free to use any tools you need from the shed." As they drove away, Alana felt a heaviness settle in her chest. Of course, someone like Mateus would have someone like Victoria in his life. They made sense together, both educated, wealthy, sophisticated. What had she been thinking? She attacked the weeds with renewed vigor, channeling her frustration into physical labor. "Don't mind Miss High and Mighty," came Rosa's voice from behind her. The housekeeper had appeared with a glass of iced tea. "She comes around whenever she remembers Mateus exists." "They seem close," Alana said, accepting the drink gratefully. Rosa snorted. "Their families have been pushing them together since they were teenagers. Her daddy owns half the businesses in the county and wants to add this farm to his collection. Are they engaged?" Not for lack of trying on her part. Rosa sat on the porch step, patting the spot beside her. "But our Mateus, he's got his own. Mind, always has." Alana joined her, sipping the sweet tea. "She's beautiful. On the outside, maybe." Rosa's eyes twinkled knowingly. "You know, in all the years Victoria's been coming around, I've never once seen her put her hands in the dirt. Not once." They shared a smile at that, and Alana felt marginally better. Later that afternoon, Alana decided to explore the farm kitchen to plan for the Harvest Festival treats. The main house was grand but homey. Hardwood floors, comfortable furniture, family photos lining the walls. The kitchen was a chef's dream, modern appliances alongside vintage charm. As she examined the pantry, she heard the front door open and close. "Rosa?" Mateus called. "Are you still here?" "It's Alana," she answered, stepping out of the pantry. "Rosa went to town for groceries. I was just looking at the kitchen for the festival project." He looked tired, his earlier cheerfulness dimmed. "Find everything you need?" "More than enough. It's an amazing kitchen. My aunt's domain. She loved to cook." He loosened his tie and slumped onto a kitchen stool. "Sorry about earlier. Victoria doesn't always call before showing up." "No need to apologize. She seems nice." Mateus raised an eyebrow. "You're a terrible liar, Alana Parker." She laughed despite herself. "Okay, she's a bit intimidating. She can be." He ran a hand through his hair. "We dated in college. Her father is an important business contact. It's—" Helena quickly turned away and returned to her small quarters. It was better to stay invisible during this visit. Mrs. Gomes's warning echoed in her mind. The Tavares family has expectations. The next morning, Helena was up before dawn as usual. As she approached the chicken coop, she noticed with surprise that the lights were already on. Pushing the door open cautiously, she found Gabriel inside, scattering feed. "Good morning," he said with a smile. "I couldn't sleep, so I thought I'd help." Helena stepped inside, closing the door behind her. "Your family arrived last night." "They did." His smile faded. "And dinner was exactly as I expected. 3 hours of them questioning every business decision I've made, followed by not-so-subtle hints about Sofia Montero and what a perfect match she would be." "She sounds impressive," Helena said carefully, taking the feedback from him and continuing his task. Gabriel leaned against the wall, watching her work. "Sofia is the daughter of my father's oldest friend and business partner. She has 3 university degrees, speaks 4 languages, and knows exactly which fork to use at fancy dinners." He sighed. "She's also cold calculating, and interested only in what the Tavares name can do for her social standing." "And what does your family think about you?" "Being here?" Helena asked, not looking at him as she spread feed for the chickens. "They think I'm wasting my potential." Gabriel's voice hardened. "My father built an empire from nothing. My brother Antonio expanded it, and I'm expected to take it to the next level. More land, more profits, more power. Isn't that what you want?" Helena finally looked up at him. Gabriel met her gaze. "What I want is to use what we have responsibly, sustainable farming practices, fair wages for workers, quality over quantity." His hands clenched into fists. "But that's not ambitious enough for the Tavares name." Branquinha approached, bumping gently against Helena's leg. She picked up the blind hen, cradling her carefully. "And what do you think about their plans for you and Sofia?" The question was barely a whisper. Before Gabriel could answer, the door swung open. A tall, elegant woman in her 50s stood there, her eyes widening at the sight of her son in a chicken. "Co-op at dawn." "Gabriel, what on earth are you doing here?" Victoria Tavares looked from her son to Helena, her gaze lingering on the blind chicken in Helena's arms. "And who is this?" Gabriel straightened. "Mother, this is Helena Martinez. She takes care of the chickens. Helena, this is my mother, Victoria Tavares." Helena nodded respectfully, wishing she weren't wearing her oldest work clothes covered in dust and chicken feed. "It's nice to meet you, Mrs. Tavares." Victoria barely acknowledged the greeting. "Gabriel, your father wants to discuss the Rodriguez contract before breakfast. He's waiting in the study." Her tone made it clear this was not a request. "Tell him I'll be there in 20 minutes, Gabriel replied, his voice suddenly formal. Victoria's perfectly shaped eyebrows rose. "He's waiting now." 20 minutes, Mother. Something unspoken passed between mother and son, years of similar confrontations, Helena guessed. Finally, Victoria turned to leave but paused at the door. "Miss Martinez, isn't it? Mrs. Gomez speaks highly of your work. The property has never looked better." Her smile didn't reach her eyes. "Though I'm surprised my son finds chicken farming so fascinating." After she left, Gabriel exhaled slowly. "I apologize for my mother." Helena placed Branquinha back on the ground. "She's exactly what I expected." "And what's that?" "Someone who's never had to wonder if she belongs somewhere." Helena began collecting eggs, placing them carefully in her basket. "You should go. Your father is waiting." Gabriel touched her arm lightly. "Have dinner with me tonight, in town, away from all this." Helena drew back. "That's not a good idea." "Why not?" "Because I work for you, because your family would never approve, because somewhere in this county there's a perfect, educated woman named Sofia who speaks 4 languages and knows which fork to use." Helena shook her head. "I barely finished high school. My mother was a seamstress. I talked to chickens." Gabriel stepped closer. "You're the first real thing I've found in years. When I'm with you, I'm not a Tavares heir. I'm just me." The sincerity in his eyes made Helena's resolve waver. But before she could respond, they heard voices approaching, male voices discussing crop yields and projected profits. "You need to go," Helena urged. "One phone call to the bank and he loses everything." Marina felt the blood drain from her face. "You wouldn't." "Try me," Ricardo challenged. "Or there's the alternative. You marry Eduardo as planned and your farmer friend keeps his land. Simple. Choice." The room spun. Marina gripped the back of a chair to steady herself. "You have 3 weeks until the wedding," Ricardo continued. "I suggest you use that time to come to terms with your future, and if you try to run again..." He let the threat hang in the air. Marina turned and walked out, her legs moving mechanically. In her bedroom, unchanged since her departure, she sat on the edge of her bed, staring at nothing. Her phone buzzed with a text from Eduardo. "Glad you're back, darling. I've scheduled a fitting for your wedding dress tomorrow." Marina threw the phone across the room. Tears wouldn't come. Instead, a cold resolve settled over her. For now, she would play along. Not for herself, but for Vicente. She couldn't let her father destroy him. The next morning, Beatrice bustled in with wedding magazines and fabric swatches. "We have so much to catch up on. The florist needs final approval, and the caterer, I'll do whatever you want," Marina interrupted tonelessly. Beatrice beamed, missing the defeat in her daughter's voice. "Wonderful. I knew you'd come around." The days that followed were a blur of fittings, tastings, and appointments. Marina moved through them like a robot, saying yes when expected, offering no resistance. Each night she stared at the ceiling, thinking of Vicente's farm, the fresh air, the honest work, the way he looked at her like she mattered. One week, after her return, Eduardo took her to dinner at an exclusive restaurant. He ordered for her without asking what she wanted, then spent the evening talking about himself. "The merger with your father's company will double our market share," he said, cutting into his steak. "Our competitors won't know what hit them." Marina pushed her food around her plate. "And where will we live after the wedding?" "I've purchased the Henderson estate," Eduardo replied. 30 rooms, tennis courts, pool. You'll have plenty of space. For your hobbies." He said the word dismissively, as if her interests were childish distractions. "What about children?" Marina asked, testing him. Eduardo's smile tightened. "Eventually, when the time is right for our family brand. 2 would be ideal, heirs to continue the legacy. Not children to love, heirs for the business." When he reached across the table to take her hand, his touch made her skin crawl. Marina forced herself not to pull away. "You'll learn to be happy, Marina," Eduardo said, his tone suggesting he was being generous. "Many women would be thrilled to be in your position." Marina thought of the quiet evenings with Vicente, reading poetry by the fire, of learning to cook, to sew, to care for animals, of feeling valued for who she was, not what she represented. "I'm very fortunate," she replied, the lie bitter on her tongue. 2 weeks after her return, Marina overheard her father on the phone. She had been passing his study when Ricardo's angry voice caught her attention. "He's still asking questions?" "Tell him she's not available. No, I don't care what you have to do. Keep him away from my daughter and my house." Marina froze outside the door. "If he shows up again, call security," Ricardo continued. "I won't have some dirt farmer interfering with this wedding." Her heart raced. Vicente was looking for her. He had come to the house. For the first time since her return, hope flickered in Marina's chest. She waited until her father left for a business dinner, then cornered Alberto in the security office. "The man who came looking for me," she said without preamble. "Vicente Oliveira, what did he say?" Alberto studied her for a moment, then sighed. "He wanted to know if you were okay. Said you left without saying goodbye." "And?" Marina pressed. "And your father ordered us to send him away." Alberto looked uncomfortable. "He's come back 3 times, very persistent." Marina felt tears sting her eyes. "Did you tell him why I left?" "That wasn't my place," Alberto replied. "But he doesn't believe you left willingly. He's not a fool." Marina had always seen Alberto as her father's enforcer. Now she wondered if there was more to him. "If he comes again," she said softly, "could you give him a message from me?" Alberto hesitated. "Your father would fire me." "Please," Marina begged, "just tell him I'm okay, and that I left to protect him." After a long pause, Alberto nodded once. The ease between them felt precious to Isadora, something she hadn't realized was missing from her life until she found it here. "I've been thinking about the hospital offer," she said, as they filled water buckets for the other horses. Haitor's hands stilled for a moment, then resumed their work. "And? I'm going to call Dr. Phillips today. I need to get some details before I decide." Haitor nodded, his expression carefully neutral. "Makes sense." She wanted to ask him what he thought. She should do, but that wouldn't be fair. This was her decision to make, and she couldn't put the weight of it on him. Still, she found herself searching his face for some clue to his feelings. After their morning chores were complete, Isadora returned to the farmhouse to make her call. Dr. Phillips answered on the second ring, eager to provide more information about the position. "It would be a significant step up for you," he explained. "More responsibility, better pay. And Isadora, the board is prepared to make a public statement clearing your name. It would be in all the papers." The vindication she had craved for so long was within reach. All she had to do was say yes. "When would you need me to start?" she asked. "As soon as possible. Ideally next week. We're short-staffed in the cardiac unit, and frankly, no one has been able to fill your shoes." "Next week." The time frame sent a jolt of panic through her. "So soon?" "I'll need to let you know by tomorrow," she said. "There are things I need to consider." After ending the call, Isadora sat at the kitchen table, staring out the window at the farm beyond. The land had transformed since her arrival, summer's vibrant greens fading to autumn's gold and amber. Soon winter would come, blanketing everything in white. Her phone buzzed again with another text from her mother. "Have you called the hospital back yet? Your father says Dr. Phillips is holding the position for you." The pressure felt suffocating. Everyone seemed to expect her to jump at the opportunity. Maybe a month ago she would have. But now she found herself walking back to the stables, seeking the comfort she had come to associate with the place, and with the man she usually found there. Heiter was working with Jupiter, the stallion, in the training ring behind the stables. Isadora paused to watch him. They moved together in perfect harmony, horse and rider understanding each other without words. Jupiter, powerful and spirited, responded to the slightest cues from Heitor's hands and legs. It was beautiful to watch, a partnership built on trust and respect. Isadora had never seen Heitor look so at peace as he did on horseback, his usual tension melting away, replaced by a fluid grace. When the session ended, Heitor dismounted and led Jupiter back toward the stables. He noticed Isadora and gave her a nod of greeting. "You're good with him," she said, falling into step beside him. "He trusts you." A small smile touched Heitor's lips. "Took time. Jupiter doesn't give his trust easily." "Something you have in common," she said lightly. Heitor glanced at her, his expression softening. "Maybe." They walked in silence for a moment, before Isadora spoke again. "The hospital wants me to start next week, if I decide to go back." Heitor's stride faltered slightly, almost imperceptibly, before he continued walking. "That's soon?" "Yes." She looked up at him, wishing she could read his thoughts. "Heitor, what should I do?" He stopped walking, turning to face her fully. "I can't answer that for you, Isadora." "I know, but what do you think? Honestly." Heitor was quiet for a long moment, his eyes searching hers. Finally, he said, "I think you should do what will heal you, not what will just fix your reputation or please your parents, what will make you whole again." His words struck deep. What would make her whole again? The hospital offer would repair her professional reputation, but would it heal the deeper wounds, the betrayal, the loss of trust, the feeling of being utterly alone? "What made you whole again?" she asked softly. "After you lost everything?" Pain flickered across his face at the direct question. "I'm not sure I am whole," he admitted, but he looked around at the farm, at Jupiter waiting patiently nearby, and finally back at Isadora. "I found purpose again, reasons to get up in the morning." "The horses," she said, understanding. He nodded. "The horses, this place." He hesitated, then added quietly, "And lately you." The simple admission took her breath away. In those 3 words was a vulnerability she had never expected from him. Heitor, who kept everyone at arm's length, was acknowledging that she had somehow slipped past his defenses. "Heitor, she began, but was interrupted by the sound of a car engine. They both turned to see a sleek black sedan coming up the driveway. "Are you expecting visitors?" Heitor asked. Isadora shook her head, a sense of unease growing as the car parked near the farmhouse. When the door opened and her parents stepped out, she felt her heart sink. My parents, she explained to Hayter. They must have decided to come rather than wait for me to call back. Hayter's expression immediately became guarded. I should. Get back to work, he said, already turning away. Wait, Isadora caught his arm. Will you be here later? I might need someone to talk to. Something in her voice must have conveyed her anxiety, because his face softened slightly. I'll be here, he promised, in the stables or at my cabin if you need me. With a deep breath, Isadora walked toward the farmhouse to face her parents. She could see them talking with Aunt Marta on the porch, her mother's expensive wool coat and perfectly styled hair looking out of place against the rustic farm backdrop. Isadora, her mother called, spotting her. There you are. We've been looking everywhere for you. Mom, Dad, she greeted them warily. What are you doing here? Her father stepped forward to give her a stiff hug, always formal even with his only child. We came to help you pack, of course. Dr. Phillips told us about the job offer, head nurse of the cardiac ward. It's an incredible opportunity. I haven't accepted yet, Isadora pointed out, noticing her aunt's concerned expression. I'm still thinking it over. Her mother looked at her as if she'd grown a second head. Thinking it over. What's there to think about? This is exactly what you need to get your career back on track. Maybe I'm not sure I want my career back on that particular track, Isadora replied, a newfound steadiness in her voice that surprised even her. Her parents exchanged glances. Let's discuss this inside, her father suggested, his tone making it clear he expected to be obeyed. Inside the farmhouse, the tension was palpable. Aunt Marta busied herself making coffee while Uncle Robert, who had come in from the fields, tried to ease the atmosphere with small talk about the weather. Isadora's parents, however, were focused solely on their mission. We've already spoken to a real estate agent, her mother said, pulling out her tablet to show listings. There's a lovely apartment available just 10 minutes from the hospital. Much nicer than your old place and in a better neighborhood. Mum, I haven't decided if I'm going back yet, Isadora repeated, more firmly this time. Her father frowned. What exactly is keeping you here? This was supposed to be a temporary retreat, not a career change. You're a nurse, not a farmhand. The dismissive way he said farmhand made Isadora's blood boil. I've been working with a recovering foal, using my nursing skills, actually, and helping Uncle Robert with the breeding records. That's all very nice, her mother said in the patronizing tone Isadora had grown to hate. But it's not a real job, dear. The hospital is offering you a second chance. Do you know how rare that is? What your mother means, her father interjected, is that we're concerned about your future, about you throwing away everything you've worked for because of one setback. One setback? Isadora repeated incredulously. Is that what you call it when your daughter is falsely accused of negligence, publicly humiliated and abandoned by her own parents? Her words hung in the air, sharp and honest. Her parents looked stunned, as if they'd never considered how their actions had affected her. We were just trying to give you space, her mother said weakly. No, you were distancing yourselves from what you saw as my failure, Isadora countered. When I needed you most, you believed the worst of me. You didn't even ask for my side of the story. Her father's expression hardened. We've always wanted what's best for you. No, Isadora said quietly. You've always wanted what you thought was best for me. There's a difference. Aunt Marta stepped in, placing a gentle hand on Isadora's shoulder. Why don't we all take a breath? Robert and I have some errands to run in town. Why don't you three talk privately and we'll be back in a couple of hours? Isadora shot her aunt a grateful look as she and Uncle Robert tactfully left the house. Then she turned back to her parents, suddenly tired of all the pretense and expectations. I was broken when I came here, she said simply. Not just because of the hospital incident, but because the people I thought would stand by me didn't. Here, I found people who believed in me without conditions, who gave me space to heal, but never left me alone. Sweetheart, her mother began, her voice gentler now, we're sorry if we hurt you, but you can't hide away on a farm forever because of one bad experience. I'm not hiding, Isadora insisted. For the first time in my life, I'm figuring out what I really want, not what everyone else expects of me. Her father sighed. some of, his sternness fading. Isadora, we've never seen you as a failure. We were trying to protect you from more pain. Perhaps we went about it the wrong way. It was the closest thing to an apology she had ever heard from him. Isadora felt some of her anger dissolve, replaced by a sad understanding. Her parents, with all their plans and expectations, had simply been following the only path they knew. "I need to show you something," she said, standing up. "Come with me to the stables." Looking confused but willing, her parents followed her outside and across the yard to the stables. Inside, she led them to Copper's stall, where the foal was now standing, his injured leg touching the ground lightly. "This is Copper," she explained. "When I arrived, he had just been born and had a terrible injury. Everyone thought he might not make it." She opened the stall door and stepped inside, the foal immediately nuzzling her hand in greeting. "But we worked with him every day. He's getting stronger." Her parents watched in silence as she checked Copper's leg, talking to him softly all the while. "You really care about him," her mother observed. Isadora nodded. "I do. And he's not the only one I've come to care about here." As if on cue, Hator appeared from one of the other stalls. He hesitated when he saw Isadora with her parents, clearly unsure if he should approach or retreat. "Hator," she called, making the decision for him. "Come meet my parents." Reluctantly, Hator joined them, politely shaking hands with her father and nodding to her mother. Isadora could see her parents taking in his work clothes, his calloused hands, the quiet dignity in his bearing. "Hator is Uncle Robert's business partner," she explained. "He's been helping me with Copper." "I see," her father said neutrally. "You work with horses?" "Yes, sir," Hator replied. "All my life." Her mother's eyes darted between Isadora and Hator, a knowing look crossing her face. "How nice," she said, her tone unreadable. An awkward silence fell, broken only when Copper whinnied softly. Hator excused himself, sensing the family needed privacy, but not before giving Isadora a look that clearly asked if she was okay. She nodded slightly, grateful for his concern. Once he was gone, her father spoke. "Isadora, I'm beginning to understand that there's more keeping you here than just the farm work." "Yes," she admitted. "There is," her mother sighed. "But what about your career? Everything you've worked for?" Isadora stroked Copper's neck, gathering her thoughts. "What if I told you there might be a way to have both? Dr. Phillips mentioned the position would involve more administrative work. Maybe I could negotiate. Work part-time or remotely for some of it." "Is that even possible?" her father asked. "I don't know," Isadora replied honestly, "but I think it's worth asking. The hospital needs me. Dr. Phillips made that clear. Maybe I have more leverage than I realized." Her parents exchanged glances, a silent communication passing between them. Finally, her father nodded. "If that's what you want to explore, we'll support you." The simple statement, "we'll support you," was all Isadora had wanted to hear from them for months. It wasn't a full acknowledgement of how they had failed her, but it was a start. A willingness to see her as an adult capable of making her own choices. "Thank you," she said quietly. "That means a lot." Later, after her parents had left with promises to call the next day, Isadora found herself back at the hilltop where Hator had taken her the night before. The sun was setting, painting the sky in brilliant shades of orange and pink. She wasn't surprised when she heard footsteps approaching. "Your parents gone?" Hator asked, coming to stand beside her. "Yes," she replied. "Back to their hotel in town. They're staying for a couple of days. How did it go?" Isadora turned to look at him, noting the careful way he held himself, as if preparing for news he didn't want to hear. "Better than I expected. We talked, really talked, maybe for the first time ever. And the hospital job? I'm going to call Dr. Phillips tomorrow, see if we can work out a compromise. Part-time maybe, or some remote work." She took a deep breath. "Because I don't want to leave." "Here, Hator, not completely." The tension in his shoulders eased slightly. "The horses would miss you," he said. "Just the horses?" she asked, taking a step closer to him. Hator met her eyes, and for once, he didn't hide the emotion in his. "No," he said softly, "not just the horses." The simple admission filled Isadora with a warmth that had nothing to do with the setting sun. For months, she had felt lost, adrift without the anchor of her career or her family's support. But here, on this hilltop with this man who understood her pain because he carried his own, she felt found again. "Earlier, before my parents arrived," she said, "you said I was one of your reasons for getting up in the morning. I want you to know you've become one of mine too." Hayter reached out slowly as if giving her time to pull away and touched her cheek. His hand was rough from farm work but impossibly gentle. "Isadora," he said, her name a question and an answer all at once. She leaned into his touch, closing the distance between them. As the last rays of sunlight painted the farm in gold, Hayter bent his head and kissed her, tentatively at first, then with a certainty that took her breath away. When they finally broke apart, Isadora saw something in his eyes she hadn't seen before. Hope. The same fragile, growing hope she felt in her own heart. "Whatever you decide about the hospital," he said quietly, "I'll be here like I promised." "I know," she replied, resting her head against his chest, feeling the steady beat of his heart. "And that makes all the difference." As darkness fell around them, they stood together on the hilltop, two wounded souls, finding in each other the strength to heal. The path forward was still uncertain, full of decisions yet to be made. But for the first time in a very long time, Isadora wasn't afraid of the future, because she wouldn't be facing it alone. The morning dawned bright and cold, frost glittering on the window panes as Isadora prepared for her phone call with Dr. Phillips. She had barely slept, her mind racing with possibilities and plans. After her conversation with Hayter on the hilltop, and that kiss that had changed everything, she felt a new clarity about what she wanted, not just for her career, but for her life. She dialed the hospital number, her heart pounding as Dr. Phillips answered. "Isadora, good morning. Have you made a decision?" Taking a deep breath, she said, "I'd like to discuss some options before I give you my final answer." For the next half hour, they negotiated. Dr. Phillips was surprisingly flexible, eager to have her back in any capacity. By the end of the call, they had reached a compromise. Isadora would work 3 days a week at the hospital, handling administrative duties and training new nurses. The rest of the time, she could work remotely from the farm. "It's unconventional," Dr. Phillips admitted, "but these are unconventional times. Healthcare is evolving, and so should our approach to retaining top talent." After ending the call, Isadora sat at the kitchen table, a mix of emotions washing over her. Relief that she had found a way to reclaim her professional identity without sacrificing her new life. Pride that she had advocated for herself instead of simply accepting what was offered. And excitement about what the future might hold. Her aunt entered the kitchen, taking one look at Isadora's face before breaking into a smile. "Good news?" "Yes," Isadora replied, explaining the arrangement she had worked out with the hospital. "I start in 2 weeks, but I'll only be in the city 3 days a week. The rest of the time I'll be here." Aunt Marta squeezed her hand. "That sounds perfect, dear, the best of both worlds." "And speaking of good news," her uncle called from the doorway, "come to the stable. Copper has a surprise for you." Curious, Isadora followed him out. The morning was crisp, her breath visible in the cold air as they walked quickly to the stables. Inside, she found Hayter standing beside Copper's stall, a rare, full smile on his face. "Watch," he said simply, opening the stall door. Copper looked up at Isadora, his eyes bright and alert. Then, slowly but steadily, he stood up and took several steps toward her, using all 4 legs. The injured leg still bore weight gingerly, but he was walking. Actually walking. "You're not planning to stay in that backwater permanently, are you?" The dismissive way her mother referred to the valley, a place that had shown Helena more acceptance and genuine community than she'd ever known in the city, sparked a flame of indignation. "This backwater has taught me more about authentic design in 2 months than 4 years of fashion school," Helena replied evenly. "And yes, I am considering staying." "Don't be ridiculous," Claudia scoffed. "What about your career, your connections, your future?" "My future is what I make it," Helena said firmly. "And right now it looks more promising here than it ever did in São Paulo." "Is this about that farmer?" Her mother's voice dripped with disdain. Patricia mentioned you'd been spending time with the caretaker's grandson. Helena, really? I thought I raised you better than to fall for the first rural Romeo who... His name is Caio, Helena interrupted, her voice sharp. And he has shown me more respect and understanding than anyone I knew in the city, including my own family. The silence that followed was heavy with tension. I see, Claudia finally said, her tone icy. Well, when you're ready to have a serious conversation about your future, your father and I will be here. In the meantime, try not to make any more impulsive decisions. Good night, Helena. The call ended, leaving Helena staring at her phone. A mixture of anger and old hurt washing over her. Patricia appeared in the doorway, concern on her face. Everything all right? Helena set the phone down with deliberate care. My mother being my mother. Patricia nodded understandingly. Claudia always did have very specific ideas about the right path. She thinks I'm throwing my life away, Helena said, sinking onto the couch. That staying here, working with local fabrics, being with Caio, it's all some kind of failure or rebellion. Patricia sat beside her. And what do you think? Helena was quiet for a moment, considering the question. I think I'm finally becoming the person I was meant to be. Not the polished, perfect daughter my parents wanted. Not the trendy designer the fashion world expected. Just Helena, who loves creating clothes that mean something, who feels connected to the earth and its rhythms, who... She paused, a soft smile forming. Who is falling in love with a man who sees her, really. Sees her. Patricia patted her hand. Sometimes the hardest thing is disappointing the people who raised us, but the alternative is disappointing yourself. Helena leaned her head on her godmother's shoulder, grateful for the wisdom and acceptance she'd found in this unlikely refuge. The next morning she woke to the sound of a truck pulling up outside. Looking out her window, she saw Caio unloading wooden planks and tools. Curious, she dressed quickly and went outside. What's all this? Caio looked up with a smile that still made her heart skip. Good morning to you too, he teased. This is for a project I've been thinking about. What kind of project? He set down the planks and approached her. I was thinking about what you said yesterday, about teaching classes on traditional textiles and modern design. You'll need a proper workspace, something bigger than Patricia's dining table. Helena looked at the materials, realization dawning. You're going to build me a studio? If you want it, he said, suddenly seeming uncertain. I know you haven't decided how long you're staying, and I don't want to pressure you, but Helena silenced him with a kiss, not caring who might see. When she pulled back, his eyes were wide with surprise and pleasure. I want it, she said softly. I want to stay, Caio. Not because I'm running from something, but because I've found something worth staying for. The joy that spread across his face was answer enough. They spent the day planning and beginning construction on a simple but beautiful studio space at the edge of Patricia's property, where the morning light would stream through large windows. Helena sketched her vision while Caio measured and cut, their collaboration as natural as their growing relationship. During a break, sitting on the porch with cold lemonade, Helena shared the conversation with her mother. She's always had my life mapped out, Helena explained. The right schools, the right career, the right kind of success. Anything that deviated from her plan was seen as a failure. Caio listened thoughtfully. Parents often think they know what's best for their children. Sometimes they're right. But sometimes they're trying to live through us, Helena finished. And just like I've had to do, there was an uncomfortable silence as her words sank in. Finally, her mother reached across and took Isadora's hand. I owe you an apology, she said, her voice uncharacteristically emotional. When everything happened at the hospital, your father and I should have been there for you. We were so focused on the scandal, on what people would think. We forgot what mattered most. Isadora felt tears pricking her eyes. Which was you. Sweetheart, you mattered most. Her mother squeezed her hand. We've always been proud of you, even when we didn't show it well. We want your happiness, her father added. It just took us a while to realize that what makes you happy might not be what we had planned for you. The words Isadora had longed to hear for so long brought a rush of emotions, years of trying to meet their expectations, of feeling like she was never quite good enough, seemed to dissolve in the face of this simple acknowledgement. "Thank you," she whispered, wiping away a tear. "That means everything to me." Her mother looked around the farmhouse with new eyes. "I can see why you love it here. It's peaceful. Would you like to see more of it?" Isadora asked. "Maybe meet Copper. He took his first real steps this morning." To her surprise, both parents agreed enthusiastically. As they walked toward the stables, Isadora noticed how her father took in the beauty of the land, commenting on the well-maintained fences and healthy horses. Her mother, always more resistant to change, still seemed hesitant but willing to try. In the stable, they found Hater working with Copper, gently exercising the foal's injured leg. He looked up as they entered, his expression guarded but polite, as he greeted Isadora's parents again. "This is Copper," Isadora explained, joining Hater beside the foal. "The one I told you about." "He's beautiful," her mother admitted, watching as Copper nuzzled Isadora's hand. "And he obviously adores you." "Isadora has a gift," Hater said, speaking directly to her parents for the first time, not just with horses, with healing. Her father studied Hater with new interest. "You've known my daughter for just a few months, but you seem to understand her well." "Sometimes," Hater replied, meeting the older man's gaze steadily. "You recognize something in another person because you've faced similar struggles." It was a simple statement, but it carried weight. Isadora saw her father's expression soften slightly as he recognized the depth behind Hator's words. "Isadora tells us you're a horse trainer," her mother said, clearly making an effort. "Have you always worked with horses?" As Hator began to answer her questions, Isadora felt a warmth spreading through her chest. They were trying, all of them, her parents to accept her choices, Hator to open himself to her family, and she to bridge the two worlds she now belonged to. The next 2 weeks passed in a whirlwind of preparation. Isadora made several trips to the city, clearing out her old apartment and setting up a small office in her room at the farm for her. Remote work. Her parents helped, proving their newfound support was more than just words. Meanwhile, Copper continued to improve, growing stronger each day. The vet declared his recovery remarkable and credited Isadora and Hator's constant care. Though he would always have a slight limp, it wouldn't prevent him from living a full, active life. He might not be a show horse, the vet explained, but he could make someone a wonderful companion. "He already is," Isadora replied, watching as Copper pranced around his now larger enclosure, his copper coat gleaming in the sunlight. The evening before Isadora was due to start her hospital work, Hator invited her to dinner at his cabin. She had only been there once before, briefly, and was curious to see where and how he lived. The small cabin sat near a grove of pine trees on the eastern edge of the property. Its exterior was rustic, weathered wood with a small porch, but inside Isadora was surprised by the warmth and care evident in every detail. Simple, well-crafted furniture, bookshelves lined with volumes on horse breeding and training, and a fireplace that cast a golden glow over the main room. "It's lovely," she said, taking in the sparse but thoughtful decorations. A hand-woven blanket draped over the sofa, a few framed photographs on the mantel. "Very you." Hator seemed pleased by her approval. "It's not much, but it's home." He had prepared dinner himself, a simple but delicious meal of grilled chicken, roasted vegetables, and fresh bread from the local bakery. They ate at the small wooden table by the window, talking about Copper's progress and Isadora's upcoming first day back at the hospital. "Are you nervous?" Hator asked, pouring her a glass of wine. "A little," she admitted. "It's been months since I walked those halls, and now I'll be supervising nurses who used to be my colleagues." She took a sip of wine, gathering her thoughts. "But in a strange way, I'm also looking forward to it, to proving I can go back with my head held high." "So you have nothing to prove to anyone," Hator said firmly, "but I understand why you need to do this, to close that chapter properly." After dinner, they moved to the sofa in front of the fireplace. The November night was cold outside, but inside the cabin, everything was warm and intimate. Isadora leaned against Hator's shoulder, feeling more content than she had in longer than she could remember. "I have something for you," Hator said after a comfortable silence. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small wooden box, hand-carved, with a simple horse design on the lid. "What's this?" Isadora asked, taking it from him. "Open it." Inside, she found a delicate silver bracelet with a single charm, a copper-colored horse. "Heitor," she whispered, touched beyond words. "It's beautiful." "I had it made in town," he explained, taking the bracelet and gently fastening it around her wrist. "To remind you of where you found your strength again, and to remind you that no matter where you are, at the hospital or here, a piece of this place is always with you." The thoughtfulness of the gift brought tears to her eyes. "I love it," she said, "and I love—" She stopped, suddenly unsure if it was too soon to say the words hovering on her lips. But Heitor's eyes had already caught the meaning behind her unfinished sentence. He cupped her face in his hands, his expression more open and vulnerable than she had ever seen it. "I thought I'd never feel this way again," he said softly. "After Elena, after the fire, I closed myself off, convinced myself I didn't deserve another chance." His thumb brushed away a tear that had escaped down her cheek. "Until you came here with your own wounds, your own ghosts, and somehow in helping each other heal, we found something new," she finished for him. "Something neither of us was looking for." "I love you, Isadora," he said, the words simple and true. "I think I've loved you since the day I saw you singing to that injured foal, treating him with so much gentleness and care." Isadora felt her heart swell with joy. "I love you too, Heitor. You showed me I could trust again, not just others, but myself." Their kiss was deep and tender, a promise exchanged without words. When they broke apart, Isadora rested her head against his chest, listening to the steady beat of his heart. "What happens now?" she asked. "With us, I mean." Heitor's arms tightened around her. "Whatever we want to happen, we take it one day at a time. You have your work at the hospital, I have the horses, but we have this too. Us, together." The simplicity of his answer filled her with peace. No grand promises or elaborate plans, just a commitment to build something real, something lasting, one day at a time. The next morning, Isadora stood in front of the mirror in her bedroom at the farmhouse, adjusting her nurse's uniform for the first time in months. It felt both familiar and strange, like putting on clothes that belonged to a previous version of herself. A knock at the door revealed Aunt Marta, who smiled approvingly at the sight of Isadora in her professional attire. "You look ready," she said. "I think I am," Isadora replied, surprised to find it was true. The anxiety she had expected was replaced by a calm determination. "It's just 3 days a week. I can handle anything for 3 days." "Of course you can, dear, and you'll have 4 days here to look forward to." Downstairs, she found Uncle Robert and Heitor waiting in the kitchen. Both men stood as she entered, Heitor's eyes warming at the sight of her. "Your car's all warmed up," Uncle Robert said, "and there's coffee in this travel mug for the drive." "Thank you, both of you." Isadora accepted the mug gratefully. "For everything." "You'd better get going," her uncle said, glancing at his watch. "Don't want to be late on your first day back." He tactfully stepped outside, leaving Isadora and Heitor alone for a moment. "You look beautiful," Heitor said, pulling her into a gentle embrace. "And strong." She smiled up at him. "I feel strong, ready to face whatever comes. I'll be here when you get back," he promised, bending to kiss her softly. "We all will. Copper's looking forward to showing you his new trick." "Trick?" Isadora raised an eyebrow. "What have you two been up to while I've been unpacking boxes?" Heitor grinned, a rare enough sight that it still made her heart flutter. "You'll have to wait and see." The drive to the city took just under 3 hours, giving Isadora plenty of time to prepare mentally for her return. As the rural landscape gave way to suburbs, and then the busy streets of the city, she felt a strange detachment. This place that had once been her entire world now seemed like just a location, somewhere she visited rather than somewhere she belonged. Metropolitan Hospital loomed large and imposing as she pulled into the parking garage. Taking a deep breath, Isadora straightened her shoulders and walked toward the entrance, her head held high. The day passed in a blur of introductions, paperwork, and orientation to her new responsibilities. Some of her former colleagues were awkward around her, clearly unsure how to address the elephant in the room. Others were warmly welcoming, expressing genuine joy at her return. Dr. Phillips made good on his promise, organizing a staff meeting where he publicly acknowledged the hospital's error in the Henderson case and reaffirmed Isadora's competence and value to the team. By the end of the day, Isadora was exhausted but satisfied. She had reclaimed her professional identity without compromising the new life she was building. As she walked to her car, her phone buzzed with a text message from Hator. "How was your first day? Copper and I are counting the hours until you're back home." Home. The word sent a flood of warmth through her. Just 3 months ago, she had arrived at her aunt and uncle's farm, broken and alone, seeking only a temporary refuge from her pain. Now, it was home in every sense that mattered. She typed a quick reply. "Exhausting but good. Tell Copper I miss him too. And Hator, I love you." The response came almost immediately. "We love you too. Drive safely. We'll be waiting." As Isadora drove out of the city, she watched the urban landscape recede in her rearview mirror. Ahead lay open roads leading to rolling hills, and beyond them, a farm where an injured foal had found his strength again, where a grieving man had opened his heart to new possibilities, and where she had discovered that sometimes the deepest wounds became the doorways to the greatest healing. 3 hours later, as she turned onto the familiar dirt road leading to the farm, the setting sun painted the sky in brilliant shades of gold and pink. In the distance, she could see a figure standing on the porch of the farmhouse waiting for her. Even from this distance, she knew it was Hator. Beside him, barely visible in the fading light, was a small copper-colored shape. Copper, standing on all 4 legs, watching for her return alongside the man who had helped heal them both. Isadora smiled, feeling a profound sense of rightness settle over her. She was exactly where she was meant to be, driving toward the place and the people where her pain had finally found rest. And in that rest, she had found something even more precious, a new beginning. As she parked her car and stepped out into the cool evening air, Hator walked toward her, his face lighting up with a smile that erased all the weariness of her day. Behind him, Copper trotted awkwardly but determinedly, his injured legs still stiff but carrying his weight. "Welcome home," Hator said simply, opening his arms to her. Isadora stepped into his embrace, feeling the solid strength of him, the steady beat of his heart against hers. "I'm home," she agreed, the words holding a promise of all the days and nights to come. "Finally, I'm home." And as the first stars appeared in the darkening sky above the farm, Isadora knew that this was not an ending, but a beginning. A story of 2 people who had lost everything, only to find each other. A story of healing, of second chances, of love that grows in the broken places. A story that was just beginning. The end.